There is an annual event in Washington dating back to 1953 called the National Prayer Breakfast, sponsored by a politically connected and secretive ministry called the Fellowship. And it attracts political, religious, and cultural elites from around the world, including this year the Dalai Lama and former NASCAR driver Darrell Waltrip. Every president since Dwight Eisenhower has attended the breakfast. Yesterday, President Obama took the podium and delivered remarks I thought were pretty remarkable and uncontroversial. Overall, the speech was a call for the faithful to be humble before God and reject the certainty of violent extremism. There was one passage that sent the conservative outrage machine into overdrive.
Remember that during the Crusades and the Inquisition, people committed terrible deeds in the name of Christ. In our home country, slavery and Jim Crow all too often was justified in the name of Christ.
In response to that passage, potential 2016 Republican presidential candidates Rick Santorum and Bobby Jindal released statements decrying the president's comments. And former Virginia GOP Governor Jim Gilmore called the president's remarks, and I'm not joking here, quote, the most offensive I've ever heard a president make in my lifetime. The Drudge Report, right-wing bloggers and commentators also had a field day, but no one got more mileage out of the comments than the talking heads over at Fox News.
The president, 48 hours after we saw that Jordanian man burned alive, for some reason thought it was important to remind the world about the evils that Christians committed 1,000 years ago.
Yeah, it's inexplicable to me.
He wanted to bring Christianity into the fight.
So it's the Christians are evil too.
Who launched the Crusades? The Catholic Church. So he's basically saying the Catholic Church was the Al-Qaeda of its day.
He said, you know what? Yeah, ISIS is bad, but you know what? Christians were just as bad as ISIS was a couple of centuries ago. He's making excuses, it seems, for ISIS's behavior, essentially saying we started it.
In fact, the president was not doing any of that, calling Christianity evil or defending ISIS, which he called a brutal, vicious death cult, which seems about right. His message, if you actually listen to the full speech, is pretty clear. Religion has tremendous value. It has too often, over the years, across many faiths, been used to justify terrible acts. And no faith is immune to that tendency. And yes, that includes what happened in the Crusades, as discussed in this 2012 History Channel documentary.
Pope Urban conceived this idea that it's not a sin if you kill non-Christians, if you kill non-believers in our faith. And so he made this deal that if you go and fight in the Holy Land, you will be forgiven all your past sins.
Now, you wouldn't know this if you just listened to the soundbite on Fox News. The president's speech was not focused on the horrors of Christianity. Here's what he said immediately after, the very next sentence, after that passage that got conservatives all riled up.
Michelle and I returned from India, an incredible, beautiful country, full of this magnificent diversity, but a place where in past years religious faiths of all types have, on occasion, been targeted by other peoples of faith simply due to their heritage and their beliefs.
Joining me now, Anthea Butler. She's professor of religious studies at the University of Pennsylvania. All right, so I don't think I want to litigate the wisdom of the Crusades in a short cable news segment. I am seeing some contrarian hot takes online today about how great the Crusades were, so let's just put those aside. But the general principle that keep in mind, the president said during the Crusades and Inquisition, people did horrible things in the name of their faith. That is a 100% true historical claim, right?
Absolutely. I mean, Chris, this is just history. It's always mind-boggling to me that the people who are saying these things would make an F in any high school or university classroom, because this is what people are taught. You know that the Crusades get started because Christians started to go take back the Holy Land and everybody's fighting each other, or the Inquisition where you do terrible things to people because you want them to say things about the Catholic faith you want, or taking over the Americas by conquistadores, drowning Anabaptists, you name it. Christians have done lots of terrible things in the name of religion.
It's also, I mean, the other thing I would say here is you don't have to go back to the Crusades. I mean, in the war in Bosnia-Herzegovina, I mean, people did horrible things to each other because they were on the wrong side of an ethno-religious divide. In Northern Ireland, people murdered each other very recently because they were on a linguistic and religious divide. This is not an uncommon thing in the history of human beings on the planet. religiously motivated violence.
No, it is not. And I think it's really disingenuous and I'm sorry, just rather lame for them to claim that this is the worst thing ever that a president has ever said. It is a true thing. It is just history. But when you are as invested as some on the right are about rewriting the history of America, rewriting Christian history, you run into people who are going to have these really horrible ideas that are changing what has happened in lots of religious traditions. And I think in this particular case, you can't privilege Christianity over Islam because all of these religions have violence within them. And the violence happens either because people believe in a deity that's telling them maybe we should do this, or they are using religion for political and other social means.
And it comes down to this insistence right now, this drumbeat about having to name the enemy as Islamic terrorism, Islamic fanaticism, that this specialness and distinctness of Islam. The president's point seemed to me to be that throughout history, different religions at different times have different propensities that are, played to.
Yeah, exactly. And I think one of the things that people are missing here is that if you play into ISIS's hands, or Daesh, like some of us call it, it's basically what you want that they want you to do.
That's
they
right.
want you to declare holy war. They want you to come after them because it's going to make them martyrs.
Right.
We just make more martyrs, and then this thing continues ad infinitum.
Yeah.
So I really think that, the rhetoric needs to be ratcheted down a bit.
It takes two sides to make a proper crusade. Anthea Butler, thank you very much.
Thank you.
The senator